What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Progress Always. Mike Anders here to empower you to prioritize your health, eliminate stress, and create alignment between your habits and goals. And I have with me today Stephen Tirpak, musician, composer, producer. I know him as the composer. He's performed at the Oscars, written and produced for Jay-Z and Usher, as well as toured with John Legend, just to name a few. Quite the accomplished resume in the world of music and composition, but also we connected in our path to positive intelligence, this process called PQ, which was really a really enlightening experience for me, as it was for you. We'll dive into a little bit of that as the conversation goes on. But as we've gotten to know each other, I mean, beyond music, because that's not our frame of reference together. I know you to be a deeply spiritual individual on so many levels, and you have expressed over and over again in our time together this genuine curiosity about the universe and our place in it. And let's start there. Where does that curiosity come from? Because I feel like that plays into literally everything else.
Yeah, no, you're so right. I think, well, first of all, thank you for the introduction. I think it comes from my fear of going to hell.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like when I was a kid, I was told that the whole purpose of life was to get to heaven, and you had to behave a certain way and do these things in order for God to love you and not to burn in hell for eternity. And I was like, wow, that kind of really, when you're a young kid, I mean, that's what I was told, and that's what I believed. And it was like kind of like really shaped how I moved through life for most of my life, honestly.
Mm-hmm. And what was the moment, or what were you exposed to? Who were you exposed to that reshaped your thinking around that?
Well, it was difficult because I would see people who were successful that weren't living a godly life. So I had this conflict of like, you'll know a tree by its fruits. So I see success from living a lifestyle like this, and then other people that were devout and living well and flourishing as well. But it didn't really seem to line up the way that it was explained to me. So basically what happened was a spiritual mentor of mine had passed away. And I remember praying to her and saying in the prayer, like, what's it like on the other side? And I think we were talking about this in a previous conversation, but I said the word aliens came to me. And I had never, ever considered any of this up until that point in my life. I was 26 at the time. And man, I just went down the rabbit hole. So to speak. Yeah.
What did you find going down that rabbit hole?
Well, honestly, it was quite jarring. If I feel like a person has to really be ready to be open to an experience that might really have them do an audit of their entire life, their entire personality, their entire behavior, their entire set of beliefs. And a lot of people they're not ready to do that. They're not willing to I don't want to say realize that their life might have been a lie, but realizing that they're living in a way that is not necessarily in alignment with what the truth actually is.
I think ready is the right word. But that realization can be a really harsh truth for people, which is what you're alluding to. What in your mind's eye? Well, let's just talk about you. Let's not even speculate on others. When did you know that you were ready for this exploration, regardless of what you may have found?
Well, physically, I was getting sick with some chronic symptoms that doctors couldn't explain. All the blood work seemed to be somewhat normal for the most part. And as I went down the health rabbit hole, I realized that a person's health and well-being is so much more than just diet and exercise. You know, like the thoughts and what you're thinking and how that interacts with your biology. Whether you have, I'm not a chemist, so I can't explain it, but you know, if you're pissed off, you're going to feel your body is going to create a certain concoction of chemicals that make you feel stressed out. And if you're continually living in a stressed out state with those nutrients or whatever enzymes turned on that makes you feel bad, you know, eventually it's going to manifest in the form of disease. And I think living in a constant state of fear, of guilt, of shame, of wondering what the heck is going on because it just didn't seem to make sense. You know, those chemicals that were constantly in my body probably contributed, you know, most definitely contributed to me being ill.
Well, dude, here's a rabbit hole that we can jump down now. So with that brings up such a beautiful thought experiment that I would love to go in with you. You know, when you look at the construct of formalized religion, and to your point, the fear of going to hell, and if religion for no other purpose is to create guidelines for which we're to live a productive life, a good life, and if the message, whether intended this way or not, is received from a place of fear, guilt, and shame, which I think we can all agree are categorically negative emotions, then what are the long-term ramifications of that school of thought driven by an engine like that on our physiological well-being? I've had plenty of naturopaths on this podcast, and this is definitely a conversation I'm going to have with the next one, because I think it brings up a very interesting point. What are your thoughts there?
You know, at the end of the day, I do take 100% responsibility for the way that I interpreted it. A kid can fall and break his leg and think it's the worst thing and go through life and all these negative things happen because of this negative incident. Or someone could have the same thing happen to them and they see it for some reason in a different light, and they go on to be super successful. So I think the teaching or the dogma, you know, I just chose for whatever reason to believe it in such a serious negative tone that that's the effect that it had on me. And in the same light, because, you know, it's said that the Bible is the truth sprinkled with lies, you know, that's a whole other area. But, you know, in terms of taking a particular stance and seeing that it might affect someone in a positive way, because you see plenty of people who are devout that are doing well as well. So it's like, it's up to the person how they want to interpret it, but I had a negative interpretation of it.
Yeah. Do you think that is, you know, which furthers the point, is it the message or the messenger that is in part responsible, such a strong word, but do you think it's the responsibility of the messenger to clarify those intentions, right? If not to drive fear, shame, and guilt into you, and you know, create some kind of, if the intention is a positive motivation to straighten out and fly right, how do we ensure that that's indeed the message being received? Because that's what good communication is. Message intended is message received. And if it's being received in any other way other than intended, how do we right that ship then? So right. So how do we where were the opportunities for Stephen to receive that kind of clarification?
Well, I've thought about this.
Yeah.
I think probably what happened back when the Bible was being written is similar to what's happening right now. You really can't say the truth. You know, there's ways that you kind of need to skirt around the message. So that's why I look at the Bible now in a very allegorical sense. Like it's not so black and white. You have to read between the lines and see what the deeper meaning is. For me, it makes a lot more sense when you look at it with that lens, instead of everything being like, okay, Noah's Ark, and there was an actual boat, and he found two ants and put them on the boat. Like, okay, let's think about this. It's probably not exactly that literal.
Tell me more.
Well, I think the first text that I read that kind of opened my eyes up to the concept of allegory was called the Pentateuch, and it was written by, I believe, some Jewish scholars that were basically explaining the first 5 books of the Bible in the allegorical sense. And it blew my mind. I still have it on PDF. I'll send it to you after this if you're curious to check it out. No, it's great. And I honestly wish that I could find their text or their interpretation of the whole rest of the Bible, because after I read that, I realized I was like, oh, you know what? Duh. But then inside my mind, then the gymnastics started happening. It's like, well, what is the allegory behind the Eucharist? What is the allegory behind the turning the water into wine? What is the allegory behind Jesus walking on water? Was there a man actually walking on water, or is that just to really instill such a firm sense of belief in something that you can really do anything? I don't know. I mean, like, if you really, maybe we'll get to the point where we really truly can fly and walk on water. I don't know. These are the questions that I still have. But
yeah, what was the name of that text?
The Pentateuch, and I'll have to find it, but I know I have it on my hard drive somewhere.
Oh, good, man. Yeah. And then, you know, was it this experience, this unveiling, this getting behind the curtain on religion, Catholicism, really the impetus for your exploration for the and correct me if I'm wrong in the conversations, what I've taken from them is, you know, you're genuinely curious about the universal continuity across religions, right? What are the commonalities that they all speak to? Because if you look at the Hero with 1,000 Faces, you familiar with that book?
I'm not.
In it, he talks about how these cultures in history from around the world that have no association with them with each other, you know, the Mongols and the Mayans, you know, maybe those two didn't coexist at the same point in history, but the point that he's making is they all have their version of Noah's Ark. They all have their version of Hercules. They all have their version of Zeus. They all have they all have very similar mythologies, if not religious characters, right? And if they have nothing to do with each other if they didn't coexist at the same time. If they were miles apart before, you know, technology had advanced enough for us to cross oceans, how is it that there's this universal commonality in storytelling? It's fascinating, and I was curious. Is that a question that you had, or that is slowly but surely gaining clarity in your personal exploration?
Well, it's just like how the pyramids were built all over the world. They had different methods, like the one in Giza are so smooth, but if you go to the Mayan places, they're a little bit more bricked out, but there's still pyramids at the end of the day. So it's like, you're right. And the stories, but also the architecture. I'm not sure if that's just like the human trajectory of evolution, or if aliens came and visited different places and gave people certain knowledge and techniques, or if we were really all Pangea and there was no water that separated us and we were all like more close together. I don't know.
Has that been that exploration been a segue into your experience with psychedelics?
Well, I think the thing that everyone needs to realize is that for all the wars and fighting going on about, you know, which religion is correct, it's kind of like they're all right. In a sense, it's all the same energy. It's all the same divine intelligence. I think if we could all just recognize that, it would be a lot, the world would be a much better place. I think it's just different cultural interpretations, expressions within the time period in which these ideas were created. And it's a beautiful thing being in the era that we are right now, being able to, you know, share information so readily, visit these sites. Like, it's just, everything is coming to one thing. And I hope that in seeing the similarities of all the religions, that we're able to come to an agreement of, you know, the highest spiritual principles that we can understand at this point.
Yeah, you know, I think that really speaks to texts like the Kabbalion, which predates the Bible and a lot of other ancient texts, and it has 9 principles associated with it that are one could consider universal truths, principles that, you know, to your point, what we're really arguing about is the implementation of those principles, you know, which makes it method. And, you know, depending on, you know, the historical context of their implementation, some of them, you know, that's where a lot of the friction exists at a humanistic level. Is, no, we agree on these principles, but we don't want to engage there. This is how Mycal wants to live versus how Steve wants to live. And that's where a lot of the friction between humans comes in, because we're so in love with our dogma, our method, our practice, that we find it hard to make room for everyone else's.
100%. And I think that's why having a psychedelic experience was so important. Because after deciding that I wanted to learn more and exploring and reading and then experimenting in my own life too, because it's not just about, you know, reading some information. It's like, well, let's try this on. Let's see how this works. Is it bringing success? Is it bringing more happiness or not? And what does it really mean to be in communion with God? Who is God? What is God? All of these questions. And the more I became curious about psychedelics and to have this connection, hopefully, with the other side, I realized that it was was really important to actually make that become real, to have that experience. And the very first time that I did ayahuasca was in 2021. After watching tons of documentaries and hearing people's testimonials, I was like, I need to experience this for myself. And I went and I had the experience. And since then, I've had 10 different journeys, ayahuasca journeys. And then since this past weekend, a mushroom journey. And while I can't say that everyone's trip or journey is different. Some people do say that they actually encounter God. While I can't say that I met God, I do know, and I've experienced, and I've been to other places that are heavenly, that are otherworldly, that you can't really put it into words, having only reference to this experience, this human on planet Earth existence. Like, there's other stuff that's going on.
No, dude. So, I agree, man. I agree. My first introduction to psilocybin and psychedelics was at a veterans retreat in 2016, right after my son was born. And yeah, no, it is there. It unlocks a gateway for sure. To where, I do not know. And still, it gives you an appreciation. I'll just speak for me. It gave me an appreciation for how small I am in this cosmic space that we're in, and that I'm really it excites me that we can have this conversation out in the open, and it's not some secret druid ceremonial type affair to engage with others on this level. And since then I've done Bufo,
nice,
which is, if you've done ayahuasca 10 times, each, I did a chakra cleansing experience with my guide. He hates being called a shaman, but it's really the only thing that like people can connect with in this regard. But when we had our facilitation, we hit all the chakras in a single sitting. Wow. And it was wild, man. But it really gave me an appreciation for the value of dealing with your past, overcoming your the things that limit you and that are all consequently self-induced by a large point. And the experience in of itself was extremely peaceful once you find your way to surrender. And there's a lot of value in that exercise all by itself, but also the allegory, if you will, of resisting life as it comes at you, and how much harder we like to make things through these magical words like effort, and how we sabotage ourselves with by operating outside our flow. And when you meet people who exist in that flow state and you don't, it can be really off-putting, because it's like it looks as if life comes to them so easy, where we go out of our way to make our own so difficult because that's the way it's supposed to be. And the truth that I've walked away from those experiences with multiple times is it doesn't have to be that hard, because the more you resist, the more challenging it becomes. And when you surrender and just allow it to run its course, then it becomes beautiful. Not to say that it becomes easy, but you now have the wind at your back as opposed to running into it. That's probably the best analogy I can come up with as to what it is to navigate those experiences for me.
100%. And that's why I think social circle is so important, because people's energy and people's mindsets are sticky. Hanging out with just some regular folk that aren't really going anywhere, don't want to really be around that, because before you know it, that can kind of rub off, versus being in a group of some people that are really making moves in their life. Well, then the same happens. So
yeah, the likelihood of you becoming a brave individual surrounded by courageous people increases exponentially. But if you surround yourself with people playing small who, speak in fearful, scarce language, all of that you aspire to become becomes that much challenging, if not that much more challenging, if not impossible.
Impossible, right? Yeah, 100%. Because, and it's like this too, kind of, there's a phenomena going on the internet musically, in the musical world, where there's these young musical prodigies coming up, and they're like blowing people's minds. Like, how are these 9-year-olds, how are these early teenagers playing like grown adults? And I believe it's because kids are on YouTube and they're watching, and they see someone sound great, and they're their age, their young age, and it's like the 4-minute mile effect. They see someone, they're playing piano, and they see someone their same age that's beasting it, and they're like, wait a second, I can, if I work hard, maybe I can do that too. So the level of competition, the level of growth, the level of belief in people, just or young people just being able to see other young people doing it and inspiring each other, like, it is crazy right now. Like, there are some absolute shark musicians on the come up that are like already full-blown geniuses. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, via the internet, if you're going to use it as a tool and not a vice, you can immerse yourself in any discipline in a way now that was, it took you a legit 10,000 hours to get to, even just as early as 20 years ago. And now you can sit with that on repeat and plug yourself in and develop, a level of mastery that took years to accomplish before.
Yeah, 100%. But also to have the belief that know that it's possible because you've seen someone else do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you only saw people like Herbie Hancock and Chick Corea, which are, fabulous piano players, if you think that it takes a lifetime to get to that level, then, that's kind of like the progression that was happening prior to that for the most part. Whereas all of a sudden you see someone who's super, super young, almost already playing kind of there. It's like, wait a second, that kind of really flips the paradigm on its head. It's like, wait, okay, so I'm going to have to practice all day long, but it is possible for that to happen.
Well, that's also interesting that you say that, because if you look at it from a historical perspective as to what's humanly possible, prior to we've actually convinced ourselves that it takes way longer to accomplish greatness than it actually does. Alexander the Great conquered the known world before he was 25 years old. You know what I mean? I think the youngest signer of the Declaration of Independence, if I'm not mistaken, was only 18. One of our founding fathers was 18 years old.
Jeez.
A nation, bro. You know what I'm saying? And here we are trying to convince ourselves that our windfall moment doesn't exist until we're 50. We've actually, I believe, slowed our life's progression down via the reliance upon technology, because now we're experiencing life through screens as opposed to our own existence, right? Because just because you know now that it's possible, you still have to get the reps in. Right.
Yeah.
Just watching the immersion is only a piece of it. Now you got to go get the reps. You got to run out of ways to mess it up, as I like to say. And that's where the rubber meets the road. And that's where I feel like people hold themselves back, is they don't want to go through the iteration process of doing it better the next time and the next time, and refining that skill and sharpening that axe over and over and over again. That's the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you get seen. That's where you get exposed. And if you spend too much time in front of that screen in your closet behind closed doors, like what was it like for you to, what did you have to go through to get to that Oscar stage?
Well, I mean, it's a lifetime of practice and knowing your craft, but it's also knowing the right people,
Mm-hmm.
and having relationships and understanding the culture. And it all plays a part.
100%. But even knowing the right people isn't enough, because knowing the right people, they're not going to put themselves out there on your behalf if they don't feel like, if you haven't proven to them that you can come through.
Right. Well, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, what is that? Is that a platinum record behind you?
So this is, there's a couple golds.
Uh-huh.
2 golds, 2 platinums, and actually, they don't just give these to you. Like, when you have the whole wall covered. I'm on at least 25 records. You know what I mean? Like, so.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, these connections, again, are only part of the equation. You have to be doing your part. The universe operates in reciprocity. And, I did an exercise with the Leaders Forum this month in helping Mike Bledsoe calls them decrees. I call them affirmations or mantras. And the one I have going for me right now, as I step into this season of my life and the universe starts to deliver on my behalf and conspire in my favor, when that shit shows up, and I find myself hesitant or fearful, I have to remind myself, you asked for this. Why would you say no? Mm-hmm. You asked for this. I just did a keynote for the city of Tempe at the Healing Field in memoriam of 9/11. Biggest crowd I've ever spoken in front of. And when I got the call, I almost said no. But then I had to remind myself, this is You asked for this. You said you wanted more speaking opportunities. Well, here it is.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the outcome of the talk, which went over really well.
Awesome.
Thankfully, isn't the point. You gotta go get the rep. You can't not take the shot. You know, and all the, you know, what do they often say? You're never going to be ready for that moment because you've never had it before, so
Right.
you don't know.
Right. That's true.
You know what I'm saying? So there's no seminar you could go to. There's no guru you could hire. There's no workshop you can take that is going to emulate that moment. You got to get in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, those accolades on your wall, and even the ones that aren't, you know, are symbolic of, yes, all those other things, but also Steve's preparation for those moments and then seizing those moments, because none of it happens if you don't show up. Practice is cool, but you got to show up.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, don't sit over there and downplay, you know.
That's my Catholic humbleness. The meek will inherit the earth.
Dude, we talked about that, man.
Yeah.
You know, and since then it seems like you've redefined for yourself what it is to be humble and exercise humility. Walk me through that, man.
Well, I realized that there's good humility and there's bad humility, just as the same as there's good pride and bad pride.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's like you have to have a healthy sense of pride.
Mm-hmm.
If pride is the sin of the devil, okay, get rid of the bad pride, get rid of the arrogance towards God, like the internal pride. But you have to have the external pride to show the world that you're proud of yourself. And that took, man, that's kind of been the thing that I've really been, you know, trying to redefine in my life, is that I kind of had it flipped. I had it the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where was that? Gosh, that misrepresentation holding you back?
I guess from showing up, like you said, you know, having opportunities and maybe shying away. It's like, yo, take your shot. So as I go through life now, having a more accurate understanding of what a healthy sense of ego is, a healthy sense of pride is, and then also having gone through the psychedelic experiences to kind of help solidify these beliefs, you know, I'm enjoying showing up. I'm enjoying, like, when you asked me to do this, I was like, yeah, I need to do more of this. Absolutely. Let's go.
Yeah.
So, that feels good.
That's awesome, man. I find it genuinely interesting, and I'm curious as to your thoughts when you look at pride and the healthy, productive, proactive version of it. What does that look like for Steve compared to its misrepresentation in the past?
Well, I look at people Mike Tyson is big into psychedelics, and who better to talk about ego than him, world champion, knocking everyone out. And he talks about the importance of having the ego, and that you have to believe and have that inner pride. Interesting, after he's gone through his 5-MeO DMT experiences, he can reflect back and say that he didn't necessarily like that version of himself. But you have to be in that state of mind to achieve and execute at that level on a worldly level. You know, I feel like some people in the spiritual space are trying to be spiritual, forgetting that we have bodies. It's like, okay, eventually we're all going to die, and then we have our whole rest of existence to go on and be spirits. Awesome. But while we're here, having like a dual experience, it's like you have to have that healthy sense of ego. That's what makes us human.
Yeah. God, that's such a good point. I genuinely feel as if the ego is there to protect us in a lot of different ways. Whether that's to, get us off our ass and go produce, or to, take life's adversity and allow us to dismiss it, overcome it, reframe it. A lot of that is the work and the purpose of the ego. And where we get lost in translation is and it's very easy to do, we let the ego start running the show. And we start showing up in the world as a less authentic version of ourselves. And over time, as it was readily like in those first 2-3 weeks of the positive intelligence experience, all of a sudden that ego manifests in our saboteurs. We start judging ourselves and others and circumstance through the lens of the ego. And all of a sudden, the thing that we were supposed to be so good at, the thing that we were going to dare greatly and accomplish, all of a sudden goes by the wayside. We start playing small. We start becoming victims. We start creating these narratives that life is happening to us and not for us. And it was such a great experience, and I'm thankful for it, because it obviously brought us into each other's circles, but also helped me recontextualize a lot of the ways that I was looking at things and holding myself back. And it couldn't, going back to the whole universe conspiring in your favor thing, it couldn't have happened at a more beautiful moment, as I move into this season of my life. And it sounds like it was very serendipitous for you too, as you start to move towards some of these new initiatives for Steve.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it feels good. It came at the right time. I needed it.
Yeah.
I absolutely needed it. Yeah, sometimes you got to shake things up.
And what was your big aha moment that came from positive intelligence?
I think the biggest thing is to be aware of your feelings. Because your feelings kind of dictate your automatic responses to things. So it's one thing to have thoughts and to try to monitor your thoughts. And it's one thing to have visions and to visualize different scenarios and whatnot. All awesome stuff. But at the foundation, the most primal, basic root level of it all is our emotions. And that's something that until recently I hadn't really considered before. So I'm having the good thoughts, I'm seeing the vision, but inside I still feel like crap, I'm like, it's not in alignment.
Yeah.
And it's not until you really take inventory of how you feel that for me, that's when the powerful shifts and coincidences start to appear. And it allows you to relax into certain situations, because then you start to act more naturally, and you're not so much inside your head trying to think everything in a conscious way. You can just kind of relax. As long as you feel good, chances are 99% of the time things are going to work out in your favor. If you're feeling like it's supposed to feel good, and it's going to work out that way.
Well, I thought that was such an interesting point about the emotional toehold that our feelings have on us if we, again, let the ego run the show. You know, what makes an emotion, a feeling negative is not the feeling itself. That serves a purpose. Yeah, I love the hot stove example. You know, you want those pain receptors. You want to, you want your feelings to get hurt when somebody is crass with you. You know, now if you let that bother you for longer than it should, or you don't remove your hand from the stove, I mean, it's such a beautiful analogy. Well, now it's your fault. You know, now you're making a choice after a certain point to allow those emotions to fester and to negatively impact your life. And that was such a huge takeaway for me, in that, after identifying that my top two saboteurs were my hyperachiever and my restless, where my hyperachiever was so focused on the outcome and moving the goalpost, that I would not allow myself to enjoy my life's achievements, and also my restless was keeping me from being present with the process. So it had me, I could start a lot of things, but it was a drag to take it to the finish line. And those two things, when they start dancing with each other, holy shit, nothing's getting done. You're not present. You're not finishing anything. And all you're left with at the end, when you close that loop, you're just left feeling like shit about yourself. Like, I got distracted again. I can't finish XYZ, blah, 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 and now that I recognize that that's happening, I've brought what was going on subconsciously to the conscious. I can now have those conversations as if they're two other people, shut that down and move into more productive, proactive states. And I thought it was super powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think in the mornings, I remember through my 30s, through, I'm in the work. I know that I'm supposed to be, this is after I read The Secret. So I would go through the exercises and I would do my visualization and whatnot. And then I realized that when I would wake up in the morning, I would feel depressed because I wasn't yet at that intended reality. And just waking up feeling depressed, especially in the summertime. You're off school. You're like, okay, nothing really to do. And then, you hit the snooze and you hit the snooze again. And it's like, wait a second, that's not right. You have to have some way to flip yourself out of that. And it's through anchoring. Like we're learning all these different tools in the PQ to snap back into a more desirable state. And I find that waking up in the morning, setting the intention right, taking an assessment of your feelings and making sure that you start your day right is super important and very helpful.
What were your top two saboteurs?
Hyperachiever and victim.
And did you characterize them?
No, I just called him hyperachiever. Like I didn't give it a name.
Yeah. So when you realize that they're present, right? I thought this was really powerful by creating characters, whether you name them, Dan and Ron, or you just left them hyperachiever and victim. But now they become visuals, right? There's a placeholder for these things for this exercise, and when you now when you realize that they're in play, how do you interact with them, these saboteurs?
Well, it's interesting because in my search coming out of Catholicism, I just decided to study magic and just go the opposite directions. What is all this stuff about? And in magic, there's such a thing called a thought form, which is basically an entity or an idea. It's kind of you can give it a personality if you choose, but that's kind of exactly what this is by labeling the negative emotions and turning it more into a personification of a feeling. Then you're able to. It's interesting how the mind. It sounds kind of weird, but the way that the mind works, it's actually, you're right. It's super helpful. So when you're able to address negative thoughts or hyperachiever thoughts, I feel like you have more control over them because they actually have an identity. The way that you understand them.
And the way that you understand it, where is the power in that exercise for you?
Well, I try not to overthink it. I'm really about sensing the feeling and making sure that I always feel good.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what it is about, even if it's, especially if it's something in your life that you want to improve, you think about anything. If a negative emotion comes up, a relationship, if a negative emotion comes up, I want to try to replace that automatic negative response and hold a positive, good feeling in that place for as long as I can.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that it lingers a little bit longer each time. And, it's funny because there's two different, so the PQ information, but then also when we started the pods, I did tell our group about a book that I read called The Sultan's 7 Secrets.
Mm-hmm.
And that is also kind of like, explained a little bit differently, but a little bit more simplistic, I think. But that the premise of that is all about understanding the feelings and emotions that are attached to, scenarios in your life. So, and not that it's like a 10-minute meditation that you do and you're done and you can forget about it. It's like,
yeah,
he was saying to try to live as you go on about your day and just stay there as long as you can until it actually, like a switch will flip, and then that becomes your new reality.
Yeah. I mean, that's that consistency piece, right? That's that practice. It's nobody goes from down in the dumps, seeing nothing but obstacles, and all of a sudden wakes up tomorrow and just starts seeing opportunities everywhere. That's not how the game works. Man, I wish it did. And I think that's very indicative of your experience with The Secret, right? It's like, the big word that comes to mind in my recollection of that movie and that book is manifestation. Like, man, I am manifesting so hard. How come I didn't wake up with my soulmate this morning? How come I don't have how come I don't have $1 million in the bank? Whatever.
Yep.
That's not how it works. And that's what I, going back to the records on the wall and whatnot, you can have all those connections in the world, But if you're not putting yourself out there, if you're not getting the reps, if you're not slowly but surely earning that reputation for referral and connection, you can manifest all you want. You can think, you can pray all you want. But if you don't get out there in the world and practice these things, don't expect anything. That it is an exercise in all that thinking, all that manifesting, it's an exercise in futility. Nothing changes. And as much as you've got to run action alongside your thinking if you want anything to start working out for you.
Absolutely.
And dude, sometimes that stuff looks incredibly hard. Is beyond daunting. It may not seem that you're prepared for what the universe is asking, but that's where faith comes in.
Right.
Yep.
I think when you do the inner work and you're doing it right, eventually you get to a point where you'll want to take the action. The action will almost naturally happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, yeah, you see it more clear and you're like, okay, I need to go do this.
I liken it to you may not feel ready, but someone or something out there, if we're going to go beyond humanity and just talk energy, something out there says that you are. And I think that it's really important to pay attention to that. There is something about the work that you put in up to this point that has created this opportunity that lies before you that says, hey, Steve, it's not about the outcome. You're ready for this next step. It's your time, and you can either lean into that and just see what happens, or you can run from it and let that opportunity go on to the next person.
So I'm leaning in hard. I recently had a revelation. I've spent most of my life making other people's music sound great.
Mm-hmm.
And as we watch the music industry, the old industry implode, basically, for so many reasons, and the rise of social media and people being more in control of their audience, I realized it's like, it's time to really figure out what my music is and what my mission is. And it's not like I haven't been searching, because I've released a couple albums, but I never really felt like, one of the things that I struggled with as a composer is like, why am I creating this? Like, what is the purpose? I always wanted it to be more than something that just, that people listen to and say, oh, that sounds good. Like,
mm-hmm.
What is the reason? Is there a reason that could make a difference in people's lives, in the lives of humanity? And in going to these psychedelic ceremonies and seeing the music and listening to the music and understanding how that's such an integral part of the experience, I think I'm being called to create some healing medicine music. But this is the caveat, because right now that space is it's its own thing. I'll just say that. And I think that a lot of the general public is not really going to connect with it in its current state. So I'm in the process of kind of revamping what I would like it to be for me. When I go and do my own journeys, what would I like to listen to? What would be uplifting to me? Something that resonates with, culturally, from all the music that I've listened to. It's like, what does that sound like? So that really is my mission right now.
Dude, that's such a big deal, and I honor you for doing that, because what just came to my mind is I fucked around and I took a heroic dose of mushrooms a while back and just threw on some random quote unquote healing playlist on Spotify, and bro, I was in a valley, and it was getting dark for me, dog, and I was like, man, I should be past this part of the trip. You know what I'm saying? Like you have these lucid moments along the way where like you come back down to earth for a bit just to get your feet on the ground, and then boom, right back out into the cosmos. And
yep.
You know, in one of those lulls, I was like, God, man, I have been here for too long. And in that moment of consciousness, I look up and this song was 38 minutes long, and I was 35 minutes in, and I was like, oh shit. Fast, you know, immediate fast forward, like get me off this ride, man. And you know, to your point, a carefully curated playlist has a very profound impact on the experience. So as soon as you put that thing together, please let me know so I don't fuck that up ever again.
Bro, I feel your pain, man.
Has that happened to you?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting how integral the music is to the experience.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a big part of it.
Yeah.
And it kind of guides, especially I love when it's live, because
yes,
the people can sense the energy of the room, and then it's more of a, you know, there's a give and take with it, and
yep.
versus having a playlist. But you know, when even a playlist, you want to make sure that you're listening to songs that really put you in a good space.
I was not in a good space.
Yeah. I'm working on it, bro. I'll let you know.
Oh man, dude, I really appreciate you taking the time. This has been such an awesome conversation, as all of our conversations are, and I am looking forward to watching you continue to grow in composition and get your stuff out there. And I'm sure that you're a collaborative guy. You're going to put some dope stuff out there with other artists as well. But you know, this next season for the Pakman is going to be dope, and I'm honored to ride alongside you as you make it happen, man. Where can our audience find you, support you, you know, and get a hold of your stuff?
The best place is my website, pakmanmusic.com, pakmanmusik.com. And that will show you all my links and everything that I have online. So.
Hell yeah, man. Well, dude, nothing but the best. I'm honored to know you. I'm grateful to be on this journey with you, man. And like I said, whatever you need, I'm in your circle, and we'll make that happen. And for those of you that are out there on that psychedelic path, be on the lookout for what Steve's going to turn out, because it'll definitely assist you in your journeys as well. When you're ready to come into alignment, let us know, and we'll help you figure it out. Until next time, progress always.
Peace.